There is a significant portion of the MAGA base now that is, in my opinion, right-wing populists who are actually anti-establishment, actually anti-corruption, actually anti-war. And what I'm trying to tell the left is, take the win!
First of all, Happy New Year to you all. I hope that 2025 is a very good year for all of you. Second of all, apologies for my prolonged absence. I promise that I will be making more content in the year to come. Third, I am back on the website formerly known as Twitter. I actually lost my original account, but I still have the same handle. That is a bit of a story, but one for another time. I would appreciate a follow. My DMs are open if you want to send me something you think I'd be interested in looking at, or if you just want to say hi. In case you haven't heard, during my absence, we here in the United States had a presidential election. On November 7th, Donald Trump decisively defeated Kamala Harris, and will be only the second president in the history of the United States to serve a second non-consecutive term. Some people, to say the least, did not see this coming, producing rather comical electoral maps in the lead up to the election, with Harris winning states like Florida and Iowa. I, on the other hand, did predict that Trump would win, and had I followed the method I used in 2020, my map would have been perfect. I didn't feel confident about it though, so I didn't bother. So yeah, I definitely did not see him winning the popular vote either. So take that for what it's worth. I will be doing a more thorough breakdown of the election in a forthcoming video, so please stay tuned for that. Right now, I want to talk about how certain people are reacting to Donald Trump's forthcoming second term. When Trump won in 2016, there was, of course, a massive resistance movement. I'm sure you all remember. This time around, there are still people who are outraged and ready to fight. But much of the would-be opposition is way more conciliatory and muted, which I actually understand. It's not like Donald Trump can win again. So, love him or hate him, we're stuck with him for 4 more years. In order for him to serve another term as president, we'd either have to repeal the 22nd Amendment to the Constitution, which isn't going to happen, or Trump and his allies would have to completely ignore the Constitution. And at that point, he really would be a dictator, and you had better be on his good side. Two people that are squarely in the let's work with MAGA on areas where we have common ground, in hopes that we will get the Trump administration to do things we like, camp, are Cenk Uygur and Ana Kasparian of the Young Turks. Trump's coalition is different this time, they say. Sure, there are mega cultists who will go along with whatever Trump does, but there are lots of people this time who voted for Trump because they believed he was the more populist of the two candidates. Trump's new coalition, combined with his insatiable desire to be popular, presents an opportunity for populists on both the left and the right to work together on areas of common ground to push Trump in a populist direction.
So what I'm saying to the left now is, no, I'm seeing something new and different here. The MAGA base has changed. Okay, that doesn't mean they don't like Trump. It doesn't mean that they're not right-wing. But there is a significant portion of the MAGA base now that is, in my opinion, right-wing populists who are actually anti-establishment, actually anti-corruption, actually anti-war. And what I'm trying to tell the left is, take the win. Take the win. We've been standing opposed here for 20 years, trying to cut the Pentagon, trying to be anti-war, being getting money out of politics. If people say yes, for God's sake, that's our lost tribe. Those are our right-wing brother and sisters who are Americans, who are populists, who agree with us. Let's go fight the establishment together, because if we're united, they cannot stop us.
Now, those of you who watch this channel know that I'm no fan of populism, and that I'm very skeptical of a left-right populist alliance. On its face, there seems to be at least one major flaw in this plan. During Trump's first term, Trump was hardly a populist by Cenk and Anna's own standards.
Do you think that Donald Trump and Elon Musk are establishment?
So they're complicated. The reason they're complicated is because they act like the establishment. They do the same robberies, the same corporate tax cuts, but they are pretending to be populists. And that's why I've called Donald Trump a fake populist hundreds of times, right? And I've called him a fake populist on right-wing shows. And I've said, hey, watch out for your own donors on right-wing shows, right?
His national approval ratings were never very good, and that never really seemed to bother him. He loved citing his approval rating among Republican voters, which were consistently above 90%. Either these numbers were fake, in which case Trump was just willing to make things up about his popularity, or they were real, which just goes to show that the Republican base won't abandon Trump, even when he isn't being a populist by Cenk and Anna's own standards. Bear in mind, this was a time when Trump actually had to be concerned about getting reelected. Again, the only way he could serve another term at this point would be through undemocratic means. In order to advance this populist alliance, Cenk and Anna have been reaching out to, if you're being charitable, or pandering to, if you're being cynical, Trump supporters in the form of appearing on a lot of pro-Trump media. Cenk has appeared on podcasts run by Tim Pool, Patrick Bet-David, Trigonometry, and many others. Most recently, as of the writing of this video, he did a TPUSA event with Charlie Kirk, where he preached the populist gospel.
I do have to give you guys credit for a revolution well done. And what I mean by that is not a revolution against the Democratic Party or the left or the country, but a revolution against the establishment.
Anna, too, has appeared on a number of pro-Trump media outlets, most notably Glenn Beck's show. The reaction from their fellow online leftists has been less than enthusiastic. To be fair to their critics, it's not merely that Cenk and Anna are appearing on these shows, it's what they're saying on these shows. Sure, many are skeptical of a bipartisan populist alliance, probably for different reasons than me, but they also don't appreciate that Cenk and Anna have been taking shots at certain left-wing positions and strategies, nor do they approve of what they perceive to be Cenk and Anna's attacks on so-called marginalized groups, or them saying that the so-called max left has some responsibility for Kamala Harris's loss. Furthermore, they think this is just the latest move in an ongoing right-wing pivot for TYT, who, according to their critics, have been flirting with right-wing talking points for over a year now.
One of the biggest cohorts of people who voted for Donald Trump, I had it somewhere around here, they believed that crime was at an all-time high in this country. And it's not even remotely close to that.
Yeah.
Not even remotely close. It's, if anything, like in the past 40 years, it's probably still pretty close to an all-time low. But how did they get this idea in their head? Now, was it TYT? No, of course. It was Fox. It was a huge right-wing machine. But where are you putting, if it's like, if it's, and he rightly, he says like he's the biggest, progressive thing out there. If the biggest progressive online outlet puts that, if it's a feather or a 5-pound weight or a 100-pound weight on the scales of that, it is it's a negative. It's bad. If you're out there saying that like that the in terms of, women's sports or the amount of subjugation you feel because somebody somewhere supposedly called you a birthing person, like how real is that, and how much of it is a narrative that has been created, and are you playing into it, and are you promoting it? Now, if you get to the point where you say, like, I'm optimistic and enthusiastic, why am I feeling so good after Donald Trump wins the election? Well, you're suggesting to people that these people are being earnest.
Whether Cenk and Anna's strategy produces some great bipartisan populist revolution, which it almost certainly won't, the short-term result has been a significant hit to TYT's reputation. As of the writing of this video, the Young Turks main channel has lost over 30,000 subscribers in the last 30 days. One of their former contributors, Mayor Mondale Robinson, actually quit the network on a live stream.
I will do no more work. I don't know why. Something just said, I will do no more work with TYT though. In its current capacity, I will create
bro.
No more content. I will be on no more shows. It's over for me. Like something just told me I have to say that. And I need to put it on Twitter. I need to text Cenk and Anna. Y'all can't call me for no more shows. I'm done with it.
What?
Yeah, in real life.
Are you serious?
I'm serious.
Former friends and allies have started to turn on Cenk and Anna. In response, the TYT co-hosts have accused many of their critics of being grifters, idiots, and bad faith actors. It's come to the point where Cenk and Anna's own co-workers and friends have started to question them.
I'm just being honest. Like I don't know who's good faith anymore. I mean, honestly, tomorrow I could be seen as bad faith. Just even saying the thing I'm saying, I might be bad faith. I don't know. Like it really is actually upsetting and it's scary. because I've tracked some of the people who they think are bad faith, and do not read the same at all. I don't get that at all. And so as someone who's also tried to hold my tongue, as someone who's also scared for my job, like, you know what I'm saying? I don't know what to do anymore. Like, you don't know what to do anymore, except for be honest. And so
As far as building an alliance goes, sure, some mega folks are willing to break bread with them, but others seem a bit skeptical.
There is the other scenario, which I think in many cases is far more likely. That's the scenario where the conversion is not remotely sincere, where somebody like Cenk Uygur pretends to have turned a new leaf and discovered a strange new respect for the conservative base for the one simple and straightforward reason that his traffic is tanking and the clicks are drying up and he's looking for a new shtick. He's going where the money and the audience are. Now, I can't see inside the souls of any of these people or read their minds, but I can read between the lines. And when I look there, I see the word grifter in giant bold letters.
And it's not just Matt Walsh who has made this accusation. Many of TYT's left-wing detractors have started to use the G word as well. My buddies Silly and Billy seem to be in the vanguard of this camp. Those of you who watch this channel know that I think accusations of grifting are thrown around too loosely here online. And if this is a grift, it doesn't seem to be working, at least not in the short term. So what do I think they're trying to do here? Well, I'll talk about Anna at some other time, but I believe that Cenk is simply coping. He's coping with the fact that his fundamental theory of politics was destroyed by the 2024 election. I've been watching TYT for a very long time. I started watching when I was in college, I think 2008 or 2009, I can't remember exactly. While a lot has changed since then, I didn't even have a smartphone when I started watching them, Cenk's central thesis of American politics has remained the same. The electorate of the United States is by and large progressive. Voters overwhelmingly favor progressive politicians and their policies, and left to their own devices, voters will choose this option. The entire first chapter of Cenk's book, Justice is Coming, is devoted to looking at polling on a litany of issues, and Cenk's interpretation of that polling, and about how they all show how overwhelmingly popular almost all left-wing positions are. The problem, according to Cenk, is that voters are not left to their own devices. They're always getting tricked. Cenk believes that the fundamental problem we face is one of disinformation. The public is just constantly getting bombarded with wrong information via campaign ads and through biased media to the point where the public simply cannot be relied upon to make the right decisions. The decisions that they really, in their heart of hearts, want. Left-wing positions and the politicians who champion them are constantly distorted and misrepresented by the corporate media, as the left is the greatest threat to the corporate-controlled establishment status quo.
The positions that actually represent the country are called radical left, and sometimes, though very rarely, radical right. We have the polling to prove it, as you heard in Chapter 1. But the positions that are unpopular and represent corporate interests are called moderate and bipartisan. If you go along with corporate rule, the press will have glowing things to say about you, and they will call that position objective. If you challenge the system, they will call you biased.
But according to Cenk, this is only a temporary problem, because justice is coming. And it's coming in the form of young people and new media. You see, while the country is already progressive, young people are even more progressive. As Cenk writes,
most important, time is on our side. The young are progressive, very progressive. Let me prove it to you in the numbers, and then you'll see. Holy cow, we're not the underdogs, we're the favorites. The tide of history. Frank Luntz has been the top Republican pollster nearly all my life. He did a poll of young voters in 2016 and came to the conclusion that they were frighteningly liberal. If the top GOP pollster is that afraid of younger voters, that means we're in really good shape. But let me show you how stark the difference is between the different generations of Americans. Luntz polled 18 to 26-year-olds in 2016, and the numbers were startling. When asked which system of government is most compassionate, 58% said socialism. Another 9% said communism. Only 33% said capitalism. That's 2/3 of younger voters saying they think capitalism sucks. Now, you never see that kind of talk on television because it's run by old people. But if you call yourself a capitalist online, the younger people who are focused there think you're probably a bad person. I should know because I call myself a capitalist. In fact, earlier in the book, I made the case for democratic capitalism. But every time I use the word on air now, I have to explain what I mean so younger viewers don't think I'm a monster. On a more practical level, what party do they identify with? As you might suspect, it is overwhelmingly The Democratic Party. 44% say they are Democrats. Only 15% identify as Republican. Well, what about the rest? Here's how Luntz described it. Quote, the remaining 42% say they're independent, but on issue after issue, they lean toward the Democrats. Oh my God. About 85% of young voters are either Democrats or lean Democratic. Good night, Irene. This thing is over, and it appears it's not even going to be close. I told you, we're the favorites. Yes, but are they progressive Democrats? Of course! More progressive than any generation before them. Also larger than any other generation before them. Who was the politician they liked and respected the most? Bernie Sanders. By a lot.
Furthermore, trust in the mainstream media is already eroding, especially amongst the youth. Because young people get their information online, they're able to get the truth. Because, there isn't rampant amounts of misinformation online, and the truth will inevitably lead them in a progressive direction.
Older generations grew up on television, which is largely pulp. I'm not just being gratuitously insulting. It's the nature of the beast. TV news outlets do very generalized discussions because they're trying to reach a broad cross-section of Americans. The younger generation grew up on the internet, where they were constantly looking things up. They're used to Googling anything they want. They have access to much more specific information. I guarantee you that the younger generation has much more information about Medicare for All or the Green New Deal than does the older generation, who heard on TV that these programs are scary and are going to cost a lot. TV talks down to you from the mountaintop. Online communities share information and build engagement with one another. Hence, TV creates a culture that generates a reverence for established norms and authority figures. Online media create a culture of independence, self-reliance, and a more egalitarian mindset. TV also avoids policy discussions because the networks don't want to alienate any of their audience. Online, you can get the details of every policy anytime you want. When they learn the details, no one wants to turn down free healthcare when it's better coverage and costs the government less. Of course, whenever we talk about generations, we talk in broad strokes. Some of the most progressive people in the country are in the older generations. But generally speaking, if you're an older American getting your news from television, you are likely to be a lot less educated about the issues. Younger generations are more progressive because they have more facts at their disposal.
Again, while I've been quoting his book, which was published in 2023, Cenk has been saying this stuff since I started watching, when I was a young voter. I'm now a middle-aged man, and here we are, still waiting on justice. Cenk is like Linus, waiting for the Great Pumpkin to arrive on Halloween. And another election has come and gone, and we're still waiting on that progressive revolution. But I would argue that 2024 wasn't just another election in which justice failed to arrive. It was the election in which Cenk Uygur's fundamental thesis was utterly refuted. You see, a candidate did make significant gains with the youth vote by riding a new media wave, which helped him win a decisive victory. It wasn't a progressive, though. It was a guy who Cenk himself described as a literal Nazi, Donald Trump.
He's a dictator. He's a fascist. That's not hyperbole. So, and here I'll upset a bunch of people on the left. Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley are not fascists. They're terrible people for other reasons, but they've never done a coup against America. They don't use direct Nazi quotes that Trump does. The only fascist that is an actual threat to democracy is Donald J. Trump. He already tried to end this democracy once. And guys, last thing. The other day, he said, immigrants are poisoning the blood of our nation. That quote has only been used by Adolf Hitler and Donald J. Trump. So he's telling you ahead of time, I'm a Nazi. It's not like I didn't warn you. I used absurd Hitler quotes. I pulled them out of history and I said them for no reason, just to let you know I am a Nazi. He then, remember, he had dinner with Nazis. Nick Fuentes and Kanye West, they had dinner talking about how the Holocaust wasn't so bad and Hitler was a hero. Those are things Fuentes has said. Those are things Kanye West has said. He happily had dinner with those Nazis. And when the Nazis marched and said the Jews will not replace us, he said there are good people on the Nazi side. How many times does he have to tell you that he's a Nazi before you believe him?
Donald Trump famously went on a number of popular podcasts, most notably Joe Rogan's. But he also spoke with Theo Von, Andrew Schultz, Logan Paul, and others. Most of this was orchestrated by his youngest son, Barron, who seems to have a good grasp of the new media landscape. This strategy seems to have helped Trump do well with the youth vote. Donald Trump made gains with nearly every demographic from 2020 to 2024, but one of his biggest improvements was with 18 to 29-year-olds. In 2020, Trump got 36% of this voting bloc. In 2024, he got 47%. Traditionally, when an election doesn't go the way Cenk wants it to, he plays the mainstream media tricked the voters card. Unfortunately for Cenk, he's acknowledged that the mainstream media doesn't like Trump. It especially doesn't work with young voters, who Cenk himself has said primarily get their news from non-traditional sources. Furthermore, Trump's 2024 new media strategy was well known and highly lauded, even by Cenk himself. So, by Cenk's own logic, rather than new media bringing us a progressive revolution, it helped deliver Orange Hitler a second term of his dictatorship with nearly half the youth vote. If you're Cenk, how do you explain a 9-point swing in the voting bloc that is supposedly the most progressive in the country towards a supposed Nazi? Well, I guess you could say that Donald Trump was the real progressive choice in the race, sort of like Jimmy Dore did, and that's why people voted for him. Obviously, Cenk did not go that route. Or Cenk could admit that his fundamental theories about the trajectory of new media, the youth vote, and American politics generally were wrong. But I think we all know that's never going to happen. My channel has a better chance of hitting 1 million subscribers by next week than Cenk ever admitting that he was wrong about anything that significant. Instead, Cenk has decided to come up with a new explanation. It's about populism. And understand, this is 100% cope. By saying it's about populism, he's trying to argue that, even though voters didn't vote for the candidate he wanted, they still wanted all of the things that he wanted, minus the things that Cenk himself doesn't deem terribly important, aka the so-called social issues. By saying it's about populism, he's trying to argue that even though voters didn't vote the way he did, they still fundamentally agree with him, with the exception of the so-called social issues, which Cenk doesn't deem terribly important in the grand scheme of things. The voters were wrong, but for the right reasons. Even though Kamala Harris lost, progressives still won. Even though Cenk was wrong, if you look at it closely, he was actually kinda sorta right. How convenient for Cenk. If this sounds incredibly self-serving to you, that's because it is. And this is why Cenk is going on all these pro-Trump media outlets and going, "How do you do, fellow populists?" And this is just terrible logic. But trying to find some redeeming quality in the country electing a man you called a Nazi is preferable to simply admitting you're wrong. And it's why Cenk's left-wing critics have the upper hand. Now let me be clear here. I do not share most of the assumptions of the online left. But if you do, Cenk clearly doesn't have much of a leg to stand on, which is why his left-wing interviews have not gone so well. I don't think that most leftists are inherently opposed to working with the right on areas of common ground. They just seem to be skeptical that it's possible to do so without sacrificing core values. More importantly, as Cenk himself has conceded, Trump is a fake populist. Again, these are their standards, not mine, and governed as such during his first term. Despite being a fake populist during his first term, Trump never lost his base, and very nearly won re-election, and probably would have won were it not for COVID. And again, this time around, he doesn't even have to be worried about getting reelected. Trump's desire to be popular never really seemed to drive his legislative actions too much. Why should anyone believe it would be different this time around? What we're watching here is a man flailing about, rather than simply admitting that his fundamental assumptions about politics were wrong. Say what you will about Kyle Kulinski, someone who I've been very critical of in the past. He manned up and admitted that he was wrong about new media being a solution, and wrong about voters caring about policies. Cenk simply refuses to do the same. He would rather rationalize away an election result that clearly didn't go his way and alienate people who call him out on his bullshit, all the while putting his network in jeopardy. And you know what? I'm here for it.